Hey, it's Joe Solari here. Welcome back. And today's guest is Jake Caleb from J. Caleb Designs. How you doing, Jake?
Hey man, how are you?
Good. So we met at 20 Books. We
Yep.
were talking in the halls about your business, and I thought it'd be great to have you on and help authors with probably what I would say is the single most important piece of marketing, the cover design.
Yeah, right. And thank you for having me here.
Great, great. So why don't you start off? Tell us a little bit about like how you got into the business and what you're doing now with your design company.
Okay. Yeah, I've been doing book covers for about 6 years now. I saw a book cover. I'm a big fantasy reader, and I saw a book cover by Raymond Swanlin, who's an artist,
Mhm.
probably I don't 13 years ago in a Barnes and Noble, and I thought, man, that's what I want to do. And I didn't. I never realized that that's where I'd end up, but that really sparked um, my interest in the profession. Was I love doing artwork, I love graphic design, and I love reading books. So book covers are kind of the marriage of all those kind of together. And so, like I said, I started about 6 years ago. It's just kind of a nightly thing before I went to bed. My first year doing it, I did 4 covers, and since then, I went full time back in 2017, mid of the year, I mean, about June, July, and now I average probably uh, uh, 200 plus covers a year, maybe
Wow.
something like that. It's a fair clip. Um, so business is good, and I've been real blessed, and I've had a lot of return clients and a lot of just good vibes doing the business. So it's been good
Mm.
too. So
So what genres are you comfortable working in, and which ones do you love to work in?
I've worked in almost all genres. When I first started, doing 4 covers, I'd take anything anybody send my way, and I would research whatever it was, and then I did nonfiction. I did all kinds of. In fact, I still have one nonfiction client. She comes to me about every year and a half when she gets done writing a book, and my covers look nothing like what she wants, but she just comes back to me every time. But
Mm.
yeah, I've done all kinds of genres. I mainly focus in fantasy and sci-fi,
Mm-hmm.
and those are the two that I love doing the most. I've been branching into urban fantasy. I've gotten some opportunities to work with some authors in that regard. I'm not really a glowy, glittery. Not I don't say glittery, but just glowy, bright kind of colors that urban fantasy can sometimes have. But so I've been doing my style of I
Mm-hmm.
guess with urban fantasy type covers. But yeah, the fantasy and sci-fi are my go-tos.
Okay. So maybe I think it'd be really good is if you could help, new authors or just authors understand um, kind of the process of getting a cover made. We could start there and like how how they could help somebody like you make sure that that they get what they want and that most importantly, it's going to deliver the results that they're looking for, which is selling books.
Right. I think one of the biggest things that I think a lot of authors overlook is when to start looking for a cover artist. Because a lot of times the authors that come across me, I get a lot of first time authors, and they've written the book, they've had it edited, and now they're looking at, my next step is getting the cover put on and getting this thing packaged. And so they want it within a month or or two. And most the time, if you're a full time cover artist, most of the people I know are booked up 5, 6 months in advance. And so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of authors have to either wait or just have to, go elsewhere because of the demand on some of us. Now, that's not every cover artist, but if you start looking early, you keep your options open early. And so if you're looking for, if you're a fantasy author and you're looking to get some of the, a real high quality artist, chances are he might be booked up for a while. So the earlier you look, the better off you can get on his schedule and make your schedule line sync up. From there, research the artist you're looking for. I know there's tons of ways to find artists, whether you find them on Facebook or just Google or through Kindle forums or that kind of stuff, or just asking from word of mouth from other authors. But start researching the artists you're looking for, and choose the ones that fit what you're after. I get requests to do a lot of symbol covers, and I don't have any symbol covers on my portfolio. and I'm not a symbol cover type person. If I'm thinking like Hunger Games or Will Wright's series, where it's just it's just a symbol. I don't do those well. I've done one or two before, and they weren't aces. And so now I just pass on those because they're just not my wheelhouse. And so find an artist or designer that's putting out work that you like, and contact them from there, and kind of go from that point. If they're not doing, if they're not, it's like going to McDonald's and asking for a steak. If they're not making steak, they're not going to be able to probably provide it for you appropriately. So, it's just the kind of the way it goes.
So when you're thinking about covers, we were talking before we kind of hopped online here, is you had kind of a philosophy about when you're doing cover design, and it's not just about the story. It's about a lot more. It's about brand. It's about the genre. Can you kind of talk to that point and explain to authors how you need to think about how that cover fits into a lot of different things to make sure that it's merchandising the product properly?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. What you're saying, authors, they've written the book, they put the time in, they've done their part of the process. They've got the words down, and the cover is a bridge between those words and your potential clients and your customers. And so you need to look at it like that. And you can't treat the cover, I guess, in a bubble with just the story. That's what I'm saying. They're not in a vacuum together. Your cover is going to be the face of your words. They're the face of your cover. It's the, like you said before, the number one marketing piece of an author's story. And so you need to treat it like that. And so one of the things, a lot of first-time authors that I run across, again, they know their story, and they want to make sure that the cover reflects accurately with that. And so they get kind of, I guess the word would kind of be visually constipated. And they have all these things in their head about the story that they've written and the characters they love. And so they want to make sure that all that's on the cover, when in reality, that's not what needs to happen. That's one of the reasons why you do see kind of a disconnect in the traditional publishing market between the author and the cover design process. A lot of time authors aren't given any kind of input in that process, and it's usually because they're so close to the story that they can't really convey what a reader wants to see, because they know the story, and so they know what they want to put on the cover. But as a reader, somebody who knows nothing about it, there's a different way you have to approach that differently. Just because you got a dog on the cover, and I'm a reader, I'm not going to associate that dog with that boy, with this and that and that. And that relationship might not be what you need to show on the cover anyways. And so, but in the author's mind, it's the most important thing. So, so yeah, it's a different beast. We were talking earlier. It's kind of like, I would approach it like you're looking at the cereal aisle at Walmart, and if you're looking at a box of Lucky Charms, you know that the leprechaun's not in the box, but you still buy the Lucky Charms because the brand is on point, the market is on point, it's meeting the genre expectations. People who are looking for sugary sweet cereal are looking for those kind of boxes. I'm not going to go down to the Smart Start cereal where it's just a white box with just some, it's real put together, unless like Apple made it. I want to go down to the fun area of the aisle if that's what I'm looking for in cereal. And so authors should take that into consideration when they are approaching the cover design process. And it is, I am putting a product out in the marketplace, and so I want to make sure that I am meeting what readers of that genre are expecting to see, And so that kind of, and when I say that means you can kind of start blurring the lines. I don't want any author to ever, lie on a cover. If your cover doesn't have dragons, don't put dragons on it. But there are liberties that could and should be taken on covers to make that cover represent the story, but also hit the product market like it's supposed to. I kind of rambled there, but I think that.
No, that's great. So can you give me an example of that where you kind of take liberties to hit, to entice them to buy the book?
Okay. Let's see. Well, okay. One of the things that and you hear a lot this from a lot of cover artists is it's not always, it's rarely, not always, it's rarely a smart idea to try and reflect just a scene from the book, because oftentimes things don't convey right. What the author has in their minds doesn't translate visually to what the cover artist, how they interpret it, and so on and so forth. And so scenes aren't really a good idea. But let's see. I think about Kings of the Wild, which is a fantasy book that came out about 2 years ago, I think, and I can't remember the guy's name right now. But Kings of the Wild is just fantasy. It's a fantasy book. It's about this band of this broken up band of I guess they were mercenaries or whatever, and they get back together and they go on this one last kind of like a one last final tour type thing. But anyways, the cover has all 5 characters on it, and they're just kind of standing there, kind of stoically. The art is done by I think Richard Anderson, if I'm not mistaken, or John Anderson. That image on the cover never takes place in the book. They never stand there like that. That never happens. That group shot, it never is referenced in the book. It never happens in the book. But when I look at that cover, I know exactly what I'm about to get into. I know that I'm getting into fantasy. I know that I'm getting into kind of a band of brothers type thing. I know that I'm getting into probably from the way the artist they chose, the way he does his artwork is kind of a gritty kind of artwork and kind of unfinished. I know that I'm about to get into something that hits on all those little points. And so it's that kind of stuff. When I say liberties, if the cover artist does a proof where the character is standing in a certain pose, don't be so locked into, oh, that never happens in the story, or that kind of situation, or that look never takes place in the story, because no one's ever going to say, well, the cover scene never happened, and I'm upset. That kind of liberties, kind of like I guess blurring the lines a bit would be my way to phrase that.
Okay. Do you think there's like with certain genres, there's like certain colors or certain kind of, just like when you're writing the story, there needs to be tropes that are hit, right? Like, for example, I was just reading a book called Hit Makers, and they were talking about how even though we talk so much in marketing about new, like news is used even more than buy in selling stuff. Actually, human beings really don't want anything new. They want, familiar is what they want. So is there things that are really that you should make sure that you're always trying to hit in certain genres?
Oh yeah. 100%. Colors for me, there's, for me being fantasy and sci-fi, there are certain colors that you can drift toward with sci-fi, the blues and the blues for space and the darker colors and that kind of stuff. But every genre has, colors you can lean toward. But I don't think at the end of the day, any of those are concrete rules that have to be stuck to. I think probably image-wise, maybe there are definitely some things, and you can use that. You can use that to your advantage. One of the, I guess, the risk and reward system is, you risk if you follow some of the typical imagery you see on, like, say, all right, I'm doing an Academy cover right now. First time I've ever done an Academy cover, and so I've had to research Academy cover, and they have girls in skirts in those white shirts all day, every day, and that's like that is it. If it's an Academy cover, it's going to have that on it. And the guy that I'm doing the cover for, that's what he requested. Make sure that it has the things people expect to see, and that's smart. Because the readers are expecting to see that. They're looking for that familiarity in on the cover, so that when they see the cover, they can process it. It's Academy, bam, I want to see what it's about. That's kind of what you're kind of falling down that rabbit trail. Now, the trick to doing that is to follow what trends of that genre follow, but make yourself stick out a little bit. For example, I'm not going to give away much of the details on this cover that I'm doing for the Academy thing, but it's got a dragon on it. It's got a dragon in the story, and the girl's blind, so she's got a kind of a sash across her eyes, and that's kind of their little hook to be a little different from everybody else. The dragon's going to be big and prominent with her, and she's going to have that sash across her eyes to show that she's blind. So that's her little character twerk. That's her quirk. That's that sets her apart. And they're wanting to showcase that on the cover so that when readers see it, they go, oh, okay, Academy. Oh, there's a dragon. Oh, she's got something over her eyes. What's going on here? I want to find out about that. So
makes sense. Yeah. I think that it's certainly things like you talk about Academy, but like urban fantasy, right? There's even things like, or another great one when you talk about like, science fiction, specifically military sci-fi, does it have a spaceship on the cover or is it guys in power armor?
Right. That's it. Same exact thing.
That's going to guide me as far as a reader that, oh, this is going to be, guys shooting it out on the planet surface versus more of like a naval feel.
Exactly. And my challenge as a designer is to go inside that trend and separate my client from everybody else, but stay inside of it, but separate out, how I'm going to do it. And for me, with my artwork, I often go with dynamic poses or crazy shots or angles and that kind of stuff to kind of give a reader who's wanting to expect to see the armored guy on the cover with the gun, see him in a different angle or pose that you're not used to seeing, so that they go, oh yeah, that's sci-fi soldier, but he's not just standing there stoically or standing there in stances that you see a lot of people stand with.
So a little bit of a different take, just for my own interest. Like you're in a really competitive industry, right? So, and it's been developing as fast as indie publishing has. So how, like, it used to be you could in some of these genres, it was almost the same. You could tell they were all getting their stock art from the same place, and that was good for a while. But clearly, you can't keep doing that. How is it for your business? What are you doing to keep yourself ahead of the competition, and what do you feel kind of the trends are for covers that people should be keeping an eye on?
Well, I mean, for me, and you're right. There at the beginning, it was you get to depositphotos.com or Shutterstock, and you type in girl in a leather jacket, and you hope and you kind of either find one that's perfect or you try to stitch it together from different photos and photo bash a different image, or sci-fi soldier guy. You try to find something, but with those stock sites, you end up dipping everybody dips from the same pool, and so you end up seeing the same imagery appear. And so and that's how I started. I started out originally, actually, before I did stock photos. I started out doing a lot of silhouette work because I didn't have the money to invest in actually a stock subscription, so I had to kind of make my stuff fit however I could. So, but anyways, I went into that, and then I moved into the photo manipulation, where you were again going to stock sites and searching over and over and over again, and you end up dipping from the same pool. What's come out lately, and it's kind of still popular, but it's kind of coming for, I guess it's getting saturated, would be boutique stock sites. And that's smaller photographers having their own website with their own stock models they've shot. So you end up with more of a custom look, something people haven't seen before, kind of thing. But again, once somebody finds a stock photographer like that who's real good, everybody ends up dipping from that same pool. Nothing wrong with that, but you end up with kind of market saturation on the same characters and that kind of stuff. Neostock.com. Bewitching Stock. There's a couple of them that are just real popular that do really, really good work. Everybody uses them, and now they've become kind of like the stock sites. For me, keeping ahead of the curve, I've gotten into renders, 3D rendering software, which has kind of been mostly a good reaction. I've had some people who aren't really fans of the 3D render stuff, but that's getting more and more popular now. If you have a model that you have in a 3D rendering software, you have unlimited poses, you got unlimited shots, you got unlimited looks. You can it just goes on. It's unlimited to whatever whatever your imagination is with that model or whatever you're doing. And so that's where I've gotten into lately, and now that's getting more and more popular. And so for me to stay ahead of the curve, I'm looking at getting into even more in depth with renders, because there's some software that everybody's starting to use called DAZ, and it's real popular, and it can produce some really, really good results. It's a really easy intro into 3D renders, and so for me, I'm trying to get past that pass that on to things that my competition cannot supply. And that's into different types of scenes, different types of backgrounds, being able to get shots that you can't get from a stock photo and that would take forever to paint or draw. So,
yeah, I've seen some of those covers, and you know, you can start to see in there. There's a whole variation in talent, right? Like you can see folks that are just kind of like they're taking the base software and kind of putting some stuff together, versus they're using that to model, and then they're going the whole next level of, like, say, effects with Photoshop, and when you get to that level, sometimes it's even hard to even figure out if it's 3D or real.
Yeah, and once you reach that point, you're doing well. You got to where you're at the point you need to be. Some of the people I spoke with at the conference and have seen my work, they asked me, is it illustrated? Is it photo? Like, they can't tell what it is, and that makes me happy. The fact that you can't go and say, oh, it's exactly that, and that makes me know that I'm getting all my pieces put together correctly, because on my end, I want to produce a quality product, but I also want to be able to produce it in a timely fashion. And so I'm trying to find that bridge, and 3D renders helps me get there faster than just digital painting or having to go in and search stock sites for hours for whatever image I'm looking for.
So we talked a little about covers and genre. What about authors trying to demonstrate their brand on the cover? What's your thinking around that?
At the end of the day, brand for me is consistency. And so, you want to make sure that if it's a series, or even if you're starting early and trying to make sure your author brand, just your name, stays consistently throughout all your covers. You don't have to do that. I don't have authors who do that exactly, depending on what they're writing. The font may change or whatever, but the biggest one that everybody knows is Stephen King. His covers, that KING, super big, super condensed. Everybody knows. When they see that, they don't even read Stephen. They just see King and they know, bam, that is. And that's a very good example of just author brand, not necessarily series brand, but just author brand. And I think authors should probably think about that going into it. If you're going to make a career out of this, you want to make sure that you start developing consistency early. And that's with any business at all. And for me, in 2019, my goal for the year for my business was to increase my brand identity. And I polished. I made a logo. I polished it off, and then I started putting that logo everywhere. Everything I did, everything I released, has got that logo on it, because I want people to start recognizing that and associating it with me. And that's what you want to. That's how you do. That's the whole idea behind brand. Is you want people to see the image or words and immediately know exactly who that relates back to. And so, at the conference, people recognized my T-shirt before they recognized me, and that let me know I'm doing my job right. I'm hitting on where I'm hitting. And so, whether it would be, you don't have to make an author logo, but if your name is Richard Kennedy, however you want to put that on your books from here to the end of your writing career. I would think about that as early as you could. Is your last name going to always be bigger than your first name, like Stephen King or another author I know, Shannon Mayer? Same thing. Her last name is bigger, and her name, her Shannon is smaller on all her covers, and that's the way her brand has developed, and she always has it at the bottom of every cover, so it's always at the bottom. So it's a small thing, but that helps people begin to associate with what you're wanting to do. So think about that as an author, about how you're going to showcase your name to the world, and you want it to be legible. So don't do cursive or curly or crazy writing. It's got to be a serif or a sans serif. But think about how you're going to approach that, and keep that consistency up. It won't at first. Nobody's going to care, but as you put out books and put out content, that will help. And that same rule applies to a series inside of a series. If you're it's a fantasy series, if the cover number one has a character and it's like a knee from their knee shot up, cover number two probably needs to have a character from the knee shot up. You don't need to switch cut. You don't need to switch and do a big shot of the face or a further battle scene distance. You need to keep that consistency up. So when all those are side by side, people can see the cohesion between the brand, and the same thing with title and font placement. Wherever it's out on the cover one, you probably need to keep it consistent across the whole entire series. That way, people, again, when they see them side by side, or when they see them, on Amazon, they've already kind of been inundated with cover one, what it looks like if they're going through the Autobots or whatever, and they see cover two, they recognize it really fast because they correlate with each other. And you don't want to break that correlation up by changing imagery or changing how you show the imagery or where you put your fonts and your title. Where you put your title and your author name. So
sure. When we were at the conference, you had mentioned too with series how you also think about the story arc on the cover.
Yeah.
Right. So, helping people understand kind of where they are with the ups and downs of the overall story arc. Can you kind of share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a higher thinking about how your covers go. I did a cover for a series. I did this back to Shannon Mayer. I did her series. It was 10 covers long, and this is the one I gave you as an example. And while I was planning out those covers, on cover one, I knew I wanted to kind of splash because we had redone the character. The character stayed the same, but we were using a new model. And I was using new angles and was trying to, make sure that she stuck, kind of echoed her older covers, but also, with new, but also this is a complete reboot of the covers. And so I knew cover one had to be the splash, had to be people had to capture people. Cover two, it's kind of like the character's on a journey in the story from book 1 to book 10, and I want the character to be on that same journey in the covers from book 1 to book 10. And so book 1 was the big intro kind of the character. It was a back shot of her, and books 2 through 7 were just action shots that kind of reflected the story in general. And the overall arc of the story, by the time you get to like book 8, you hit that point in the story where it all kind of goes to pot, and she's it's all looking bleak. And then books 9 and 10 were kind of the upswing of that, the final climax and all that kind of stuff. So in book 8, the imagery is very melancholy. And it reflects the title was called Wounded, and it reflects that title. It reflects kind of a, it's all kind of went downhill now. What are we going to do? And then in book 9, I ramped up the way the character was, the way that she was posed on the cover to be kind of more, I'm ready to do this. Let's get going. And then in book 10, she's facing the camera finally, facing the viewer finally after 10 books. She is looking dead at the character, at the viewer. Kind of like saying, here we go. This is it, book 10. So there's an escalation as I went through the series. And I think that is probably something that probably isn't thought about with everybody, but I try to put that in my covers because I know it kind of subtly hypes up the series and hypes up the books. And if they're already out, if I'm a viewer and I see book 1 through 3, if it's just a trilogy, and I see there's kind of an escalation in the artwork in terms of what's happening with the characters, that can get me excited for book 1 because I want to see, I want to get book 1, and then I want to see what happens in book 2 and 3. So
sure. So in that case, that was the series was already out, and you recovered it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you don't want to share specifically about a particular client, but can you talk in kind of generalities about where you've done that and kind of results that you've seen around like rank or reduction in advertising?
With recovers or just in general?
Yeah, just recovers, yeah.
Recovers, I haven't done a lot of them.
Okay.
At least to my knowledge. I mean, I know I've done, none of them come back to mind. And Shannon's is the only one that I can think of recently because I just did it. But now I know the reception to that was she had, her fans were, she had a launch event and her fans gobbled up the new covers and the new artwork. So, it gave them a new window into the world. And so they were excited about that. And from her, speaking with her, through email, I know she's had a good reception from it. But I can't think of any rebrands. But now I was talking to a client at the conference in Vegas, and they were talking about some of the covers I had done and the click-throughs that my covers were getting. It was not; they weren't new. They weren't rebrands, but they were new covers. But he was talking about click-throughs and click rates and that kind of stuff, and or per click rates or whatever. I think that's how you call them.
Yeah.
And so, but he was, and this, I guess, I can't speak to everybody, but he was saying my covers, he was a publisher, and he was saying that my covers had some of the I guess cheapest click throughs of all the ones that his publishing company puts out. They got their best bang for their buck in that in those click throughs, and that made me happy. At least made me know I was doing my job right, And so it also plays back to the importance of the cover being so crucial, being the crucial piece of your advertising marketing. Because this guy, the guy was using my covers. Every time I do a cover, I supply a wide shot. So he was using my covers, for the ads with just some wording on them. And they've got, I don't know how many covers out at one time. I mean, this company put out 400 books last year. So and I did a handful of them. But it goes to show that if your cover's on point and on brand and on genre and it's done well, you can see that through those clicks. And so he was telling me that he named all 4 or 5 covers I had done for the company and how they all had good returns on their advertising spending and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something that is hard when you're an author, especially when you're first getting started and you understand what it can cost to get a good cover done. It's like, wow, that's going to cost me a bunch of money. But it's one of these things where the return on investment is really significant when you compare it to, okay, you spend, 3 times on that cover to get a really great cover. And now you get the return on that because your advertising is 20% lower, or your click-through rate, just, more people are clicking on it and going to your sales page, right? Just that you have to be realistic about that. That's driving an enormous amount of engagement. You can't count on your blurb closing the deal if they never click through to read your blurb. Right. Right. And so I think that's something that's we're going to probably be hearing a lot more about, and people are going to be looking at more often. Is like, because I know some folks that I've worked with where they've gone through recoverings and seen, it's been like, wow, I just spent an enormous amount of money on doing this whole series, but it pays back with the fact that all of a sudden now their cost for advertising dropped by, double digits.
Yeah.
Right? That, especially on Amazon, where the only thing you're allowed to show is your cover.
Right.
Like,
yeah. I mean, it pays off. I mean, and I know I mentioned earlier, and I know authors can sometimes balk at the cost of a cover, and they can range from all kind of stuff. There's, $10 for one person is expensive, $10 for another person is not expensive, but, the price can range on covers. But once you find, if you found a cover artist who does the job that you see their portfolio, they do a good job, they're worth it's worth that in the end, because of the payoff. And I did mention, about looking early. If you find somebody that's like super expensive, but you really want them, if you found them early, you can, save up for them as you're going. Versus all of a sudden I need this in 3 weeks and I don't have $500 to devote to this cover because, it's an expensive cover, or whatever. So, I mean, you can think about that can help, but also, it pays off, a polished cover, people react to it, and you do, and authors do the same thing. Looking through Amazon, we judge by the cover. I passed all kind of books before that I thought the covers were awful, and I don't have any care to read them. And you do the same. And you may say, "Well, I'm a cover artist, so I'm looking. I just look through everything with that filter on." And authors are authors, so they look through it with a filter of their own. I would say, look at how you handle Netflix. You're looking for a sci-fi movie on Netflix, and you're in the sci-fi section. If you don't recognize the title, you're looking by the imagery on the screen, and you're looking to see something that's done that looks like what you're after, And so there's a science behind that mindset as far as it goes.
Oh yeah, I think that's the part that why covers are so powerful is there's those cognitive biases. Even like it's a sexy woman that's looking at you, right? Like there's all kinds of psychology behind that what a man thinks when they look at that and what a woman thinks that look at that. But everyone knows that a sexy woman making eye contact helps sell a product, right?
Right. Exactly.
That's wired into our brains. We can't.
And you talking about the eye contact thing. I've got one author who every cover I do for her, eye contact. She wants the character always, and I don't believe that. I've bought and designed tons of covers that the character is not looking directly at the person, but the eye contact thing, man. She is gung ho. Everyone has to be looking back at the reader, and and that's fine. I'm happy to oblige her. But yeah, there's a method to the madness kind of thing. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, there's you look at some of those different studies they've done around kind of priming people to buy stuff, and it's you think about kind of back to the packaging thing is like how you go to the ice cream section and the way that the packaging is done. All that ice cream costs about the same to make.
Yep.
Right. It's in a lot of cases, it's the same flavor and made in the same factory, but because of the packaging, you're prepared to pay more for it. And you may even think it tastes different.
Exactly. Oh yeah,
right?
Man. The olive oil that I cook with, I could not tell you the name of it, but I bought it for years because of the packaging. It's got a yellow label. It's really, really well done. It's got this like a silhouette of an antelope or something on it. I can't tell you the name of it right now. I can't even tell you, but I've bought it over and over and over and over and over again because I like the packaging, man. I was like, I like that. I want that. So I'm going to, I spend, I don't even know how much it costs compared to the other olive oil on the aisle. But yeah, I got it because of that packaging. And you can do, I can't think of the link, but there was Netflix released some information about their thumbnail process and how they release how people react to them. And, they change. If you go on Netflix, you can see they change their little thumbnails for shows, probably like once every day or every other day or whatever. It won't always be the same little thumbnail. But they were talking about the study behind how fast people look at something and register it and decide if they're going to click on it. And it's like sub 1 second, if I remember right. And that same mindset, we do that same mindset going into book covers or looking through Amazon for fantasy books or for whatever books you're looking for. You process and eliminate imagery so fast, and as an author, you can capitalize on that mindset, and you should think about that mindset going into it. Because it means a lot. One of the things that I run up to a lot is authors. Oftentimes will try to put a lot of stuff on the cover. They want to make sure they get all these little points from their story onto the cover so that people can see the correlation. Well, as somebody who's never read the book, some people are never going to make that correlation, but they get so enamored with it, it's all got to be on there, that they end up muddying their imagery because they want so much. And when you think about people processing imagery or processing covers or thumbnails, under sub 1 second, you really need to boil down your cover to kind of the most primary aspects and primary things that you need to hit with that genre. Back to the urban fantasy thing, a girl in a leather jacket, you're hitting on that trope people expect to see, but you've got that's there if that's in your story, and you make sure that people see that immediately and that so they know, okay, now I've seen it, now I can go here and keep going, so.
How do you deal with the fact that you've got an image that you get on Amazon? I mean, it could be maybe an inch high, like,
right.
And you're comparing it against 20, 30, 100 other images that are the same size. How are you thinking about making it so that out of all those little squares, people are going to that book?
For me, is the cover artist. A lot of my covers are character centered and character driven, and so I make sure that my character takes center stage to the piece, and that if it's a sci-fi soldier and they're in the middle of a battlefield and stuff is exploding and there's grit and there's dust in the air and fire in the background, I make sure that those elements are there but I make sure that there's also clarity in that in that image, so that the character is silhouetted correctly against the backdrop, so that when people see it, so that contrast helps register at a thumbnail size or at an inch size. That contrast helps to showcase the cover the image that I'm wanting to show. I just did a cover for it was a wizard mage lady, and she's getting ready to cast down some magic out of her hand. And the first cover pass I did looked good blown up, but when you sized it down, she got lost in the background of the smoke and the sky that was behind her. And so I had to go back in and make sure that I adjusted the contrast behind her so that she framed out correctly, so that at a small view you could easily see that it was a lady, and that she was getting ready. She had magic in her hand, and she was getting ready to kind of cast down this spell. But yeah, at that point, when you're at thumbnail view, on my end, design principles come into play: contrast, color choice, making sure that the title and the author name are there, but they don't compete or they don't compete with the image, and also that the image doesn't muddy the title or the author name. So it's a balance, and that's where, for me, going to design school and stuff helps that out a lot.
Cool. Well, Jake, why don't you tell folks where they can get in touch with you? And I know you're a busy guy, especially after the conference. You've probably been getting the phone ringing off the hooks.
Yeah,
but
yeah, it was great to meet everybody and to network and just meet new people and have people get my business card. Even though I've been doing it 6 years, and people still see my work and they go, "Oh yeah, I'd love to have a cover from you." That makes it worth it. But yeah, you can find me at jcalebdesign.com. You can find me on Facebook, jcalebdesign, Twitter, jcalebdesign, Instagram, jcalebdesign. Like I said, my goal this year was to make sure my brand was on point, and that it was the same thing everywhere. And so if you look up jcalebdesign, you can find me pretty much on any of the platforms. And I'm always near my computer. So,
sure.
So yeah, if anybody sees my work and wants to reach out, feel free.
Okay. And then you do a thing with pre-mades too, right?
Oh yeah. I do. In 2018, I started releasing one pre-made a week. More so just for me to be able to experiment with artwork and to be able to try things that sometimes I don't get to try with some of the clients that I got. And so, I release one pre-made a week. It's a pre-made cover. It's either going to be fantasy, sci-fi, or urban fantasy related. I release it every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Like today's Friday, tonight 9 o'clock. I've already got my pre-made ready to rock, and so it'll drop at 9. And I'll release it in my group, and it's kind of a first come first served basis.
And so that's on Facebook. You have to be part of your group.
If you want to see the cover, you have to be part of my group. But now you can buy it through my website, because it releases. Okay. It comes on my website, and you have to purchase through there. So you can just go to my website and find them too. But generally, they don't last very long. Usually, the lifespan of one being up for sale is about 10 minutes. Yeah. So they go pretty quick. Thankfully, like I said, I've been blessed with good clients and good customers and good fans.
So with that pre-made, what do you typically sell those for?
$150.
$150. So
yeah. So it's in my opinion, a relatively inexpensive way to get a good cover. And that's why I do it. Like I know there's people out there, and everybody's financial situation is different, and there's all kind of other variables to everybody's life. And so my whole goal was to make something that I enjoyed making, but also if somebody bought and put on a cover that it would look custom, and that they would be able to get in at a lower level of price. So.
Yeah, that's great. I saw that, and some of them have been amazing. Some of the stuff you've put up there.
Man. Yeah, they're fun to make, because, like I said, I just get to do whatever is in my head, so I don't have to be locked down to anybody's direction or anybody's input. And so I just get to think, oh, I'm going to do this this week, and get to experiment and give it a shot. So
yeah, and then they get to put their name and their title on that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can change everything. Now, I've had a lot of people keep the titles that I make. That's another fun part of the process. Is if I make something and somebody goes, I like the title too, we'll just keep it. That makes me feel good. But yeah, changing titles, changing author names, that's all part of the package.
Well, thanks for coming on. It's been great having you and helping the authors understand like how to make sure that they get this important part of their work sorted out.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, I hope
All
I've been
right.
helpful and somebody's gotten something out of something I said. So,
All right. Good
all right.
talking to you.
Yeah, man. Take care. Okay.